Westeros, a land where power and bloodline dictate the fate of its rulers, has witnessed the reigns of many kings and queens. Among them, two queens stand out not just for their ambition, but for the sheer force with which they claim their thrones. Cersei Lannister, the Lioness of the West, and Rhaenyra Targaryen, the Dragon's heir. Both women, born into power, fought to carve their names into the history of the Seven Kingdoms. Were they tyrants, victims of circumstance, or something more complex? Let's explore. To understand Cersei Lannister and Rhaenyra Targaryen, we must first understand the houses they were born into. Two of the most powerful families in Westeros, each with their own rich and often bloody histories. Cersei was born into House Lannister, synonymous with wealth, power, and ruthlessness. The Lannisters of Casterly Rock were the wealthiest family in Westeros, and their influence spanned from the Western Hills to the halls of King's Landing. Tywin Lannister, Cersei's father, epitomized Lannister strength, a shrewd and calculating man who ruled his house with an iron fist. From a young age, Cersei was taught to view the world through a lens of power and control. She was raised on tales of Lannister dominance, their golden legacy, and the importance of maintaining their status at any cost. This upbringing turned her into a woman who saw relationships as tools for maintaining power rather than genuine connections. On the other side, we have Rhaenyra Targaryen, born into the ancient and revered House Targaryen, the blood of the dragon. The Targaryens, descended from Valyria, were known for their dragons and near unshakable grip on the Iron Throne. Rhaenyra was born in the Red Keep, surrounded by the echoes of her ancestors' conquests. She was raised on the stories of Aegon the Conqueror and his sisters, who forged the Seven Kingdoms into one realm under Targaryen rule. As the firstborn child of King Viserys, she was named his heir, a rare occurrence for a daughter in the patriarchal society of Westeros. Rhaenyra believed it was her destiny to ascend the Iron Throne, just as her ancestors had. The paths Cersei and Rhaenyra took to claim the Iron Throne were fraught with challenges, betrayals, and bloodshed. Yet both women displayed a ruthless determination to secure their power, regardless of the cost. Cersei's rise to power was a calculated ascent, marked by manipulation and a willingness to do whatever it took to sit on the Iron Throne. After the death of Robert Baratheon, her husband, Cersei maneuvered herself into a position of power as Queen Regent for her son, King Joffrey. But she desired the throne for herself. The Red Keep became the center of Cersei's power plays. She orchestrated the deaths of her enemies and consolidated her power. Her ultimate act of seizing power came when she orchestrated the destruction of the Great Sept of Baelor using wildfire, eliminating all her enemies in one explosive move. This act not only cemented her rule, but also displayed the lengths she would go to secure her throne. Rhaenyra's rise to power was no less tumultuous. Named as her father's heir, she was poised to become the first ruling queen of Westeros. However, her claim was immediately contested upon the death of King Viserys, leading to the infamous civil war known as the Dance of the Dragons. Rhaenyra's journey to the throne was marked by both the fierce loyalty of her supporters and the equally fierce opposition of her detractors. Unlike Cersei, who ruthlessly eliminated her enemies, Rhaenyra's rise was hampered by the fracturing of her house and the constant battles she had to fight to maintain her claim. The Targaryen dragons, once the source of the family's power, became instruments of destruction, tearing the realm apart in the process. Once they secured the throne, both Cersei and Rhaenyra faced the monumental task of ruling. However, their approaches to governance and the results of their rule were starkly different. Cersei ruled with a mix of fear, manipulation, and paranoia. Her primary focus was on maintaining her power and eliminating any threats, real or perceived. Her leadership style was one of reaction rather than proaction. Every decision she made was to either punish her enemies or solidify her control, often to the detriment of the kingdom. Under Cersei's rule, King's Landing became a place of fear. The destruction of the Sept of Baelor was not just a power play, it was a message to all of Westeros that Cersei would not tolerate dissent. Her policies were harsh, and her reign was one of terror rather than respect. In contrast, Rhaenyra's rule, though brief, was marked by her attempts to assert control over a realm that was already deeply divided. Her leadership style was more assertive, yet she was constantly undermined by the civil war that raged around her. Despite her best efforts, Rhaenyra's reign was fraught with challenges. The Dance of the Dragons, the civil war she fought to secure her throne, left the realm in ruins and weakened the Targaryen hold on Westeros. Where Cersei ruled through fear and oppression, Rhaenyra's rule was one of constant conflict, where every victory was tempered by loss. The reigns of Cersei and Rhaenyra were defined by pivotal events and battles that not only shaped their rule, but also left a lasting impact on the history of Westeros. Cersei's reign was marked by several key events, the most significant of which was the destruction of the Great Sept of Baelor. This act of mass murder, carried out through the use of wildfire, was both a calculated move to eliminate her enemies and a declaration of her absolute power. The death of her son Tommen, who took off his crown and jumped to his death after witnessing the destruction, marked a turning point for Cersei. It was the final severance of her ties to humanity, leaving her with nothing but the throne. Despite the horrors she unleashed, Cersei remained resolute in her belief that she was the rightful ruler of Westeros. Rhaenyra's reign was similarly marked by conflict, though hers was centered around the civil war known as the Dance of the Dragons. The dance was a series of battles fought between the factions supporting Rhaenyra's claim to the throne and those supporting her half-brother, Aegon II. Unlike Cersei, who sought to maintain control through fear, Rhaenyra's battles were fought for survival and legitimacy. The Dance of the Dragons was a brutal conflict that left Rhaenyra's forces depleted. Despite her initial victories, Rhaenyra's rule was ultimately undone by the internal divisions within her own house and the relentless assault from her enemies. The fates of Cersei and Rhaenyra were significantly influenced by the allies who supported them and the enemies who opposed them. These relationships, forged in the fires of ambition and war, shaped the course of their reigns and ultimately their legacies. Cersei's rule was bolstered by a small but fiercely loyal group of allies, chief among them Qyburn and Sir Gregor Clegane. However, she also made powerful enemies, including the Tyrells, the Starks, and eventually Daenerys Targaryen. Cersei's actions, particularly the destruction of the Great Sept, alienated many of her former allies and emboldened her enemies. Despite her attempts to secure loyalty through fear, Cersei's isolation grew as her reign continued. Rhaenyra's reign was similarly shaped by the allies who supported her and the enemies who sought to destroy her. As the heir to the Iron Throne, Rhaenyra had the backing of many powerful houses, including the Velaryons and the Blacks. Her marriage to Daemon Targaryen also strengthened her claim. However, Rhaenyra faced significant opposition from her half-brother Aegon II and his supporters, leading to the outbreak of the Dance of the Dragons. Despite her formidable allies, Rhaenyra's enemies ultimately proved too strong, leading to her capture and execution. The downfall of Cersei Lannister and Rhaenyra Targaryen serves as a tragic reminder of the high price of power in Westeros. Both women, despite their strength and ambition, met their end in ways that mirrored the nature of their rule. Cersei's downfall was as dramatic as her rise. The destruction of King's Landing by Daenerys Targaryen's forces marked the end of her reign. In her final moments, Cersei's facade of invincibility crumbled. Trapped beneath the Red Keep, with the walls literally closing in around her, she was left with only Jaime, her twin and lover, by her side. Despite all her efforts to secure her power, Cersei's end was marked by a profound sense of helplessness and fear. Her death, buried in the ruins of the very castles she had fought so hard to control, was a tragic yet fitting conclusion to her story. Rhaenyra's end was equally tragic, though it came at the hands of her own kin. After a protracted and bloody civil war, Rhaenyra was captured and fed to a dragon, a horrifying end for the once proud queen. Her death marked the beginning of the end for the Targaryen dynasty itself. Despite her best efforts to secure her throne, Rhaenyra was undone by the very family she sought to lead. Although Cersei Lannister and Rhaenyra Targaryen met tragic ends, their legacies continue to shape the history of Westeros. Each queen left behind a complex and lasting impact. Cersei's legacy is one of infamy. She is remembered as a queen who ruled through fear, manipulation, and ruthless ambition. However, her legacy is not without its complexities. Cersei's rule serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the high price of ambition. Rhaenyra's legacy is similarly complex, though it is often viewed through the lens of tragedy. She is remembered as the first woman to claim the Iron Throne, a trailblazer in a male-dominated world. Despite her tragic end, Rhaenyra's legacy endures as a symbol of defiance and determination. Her story serves as both an inspiration and a warning, a reminder of the difficulties faced by those who challenge the status quo. In comparing Cersei Lannister and Rhaenyra Targaryen, we see two women who were both shaped by their circumstances and their ambitions. Their paths were different, but their fates were strikingly similar. Both met tragic ends in their pursuit of power. But what if things had been different? Could either of these queens have succeeded under different circumstances? Or were they doomed by their own choices in the world they lived in? Cersei and Rhaenyra, despite their flaws and their failures, remind us that the pursuit of power is never a simple matter of right or wrong. It is a complex, often perilous path where even the most determined and capable can fall. As we reflect on their stories, we are left to wonder, in a world as brutal and unforgiving as Westeros, is it possible for anyone to truly win the Game of Thrones? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Cersei or Rhaenyra could have found a different fate? Or were they both bound to meet the same tragic end? And which queen's story resonates with you the most? Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the Queens of Westeros. If you enjoyed this exploration of Cersei Lannister and Rhaenyra Targaryen, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into the world of ice and fire. Your support means a lot, and I'm excited to bring you more content exploring the rich histories and complex characters of Westeros.